It is a great pleasure to introduce to you today our keynote speaker, Judith Phillips. Judith is a professor of gerontology and deputy principal research at the University of Stirling. So she's come a long ways across the pond to give her talk today. She's the UKRI Research Director for the Healthy Aging Challenge, which you're going to hear about today, and its relevance for the Canadian scene. Her research interests intersect social, behavioral, and environmental aspects of aging, and she's published and researched widely on the social care of older adults and caregiving. Professor Phillips has been highly active in shaping the UK's gerontological research landscape, and her applied research has significantly impacted government policy over the years. Between 2008 and 2010, Judith was president of the British Society of Gerontology, and in 2013, she was awarded the Order of the British Empire for services to older adults. Her talk today, it's going to come up in a second, is Healthy Aging, Challenges and Opportunities for the UK and Canada. Judith Phillips, round of applause, please.
Good morning, everyone. Well, thank you, Andrew, for your very generous introduction and kind invitation to present at the Friesen conference, and particularly during your 40th anniversary year of the Gerontology Research Centre. It's a real honour for me to be here, having watched you grow over the last 40 years from afar, and particularly in my areas of interest, which is great. So the work in environmental gerontology by Habib, and work on family relationships, caregiving that Barbara's been undertaking, Andrew Sixsmith, and of course, Andrew, your own work on the Canadian longitudinal study. But it's a particular pleasure for me to be celebrating the anniversary with you and your former director, Professor Gloria Gutman, of course, whose enthusiasm and passion for gerontology inspired me in my earlier career. Gloria, you are truly a trailblazer in the field, and it's been a real pleasure and privilege to know you. And I would like to extend that sentiment not only to colleagues at SFU, but also to UBC, and particularly to Professor Anne-Martin Matthews, who in her role as Scientific Director of the CIHR Institute of Aging, initiated the Canadian collaboration with the UK on the last programme of research called the New Dynamics of Aging, which has led into the Healthy Aging Challenge, which is what I'm going to speak of today. So as research director, as Andrew mentioned, I've been asked to speak on the challenge, which is a £98 million government initiative running over 4 years from 2019 to 24 in the UK. So we've only got about 9 months to go. And as part of this challenge, we have a research programme, the Social, Behavioural and Design Research Programme. And I'm going to talk about this programme in particular, but also how we also might address how this resonates in a Canadian context, given the similar challenges that we face both sides of the pond. So I think both countries can say the world around us is changing, with an ageing population, climate change, alongside antibiotic resistance and provision of clean water as key global challenges. The UN describes population ageing as one of the most significant social transformations of the 21st century, and it's something that we both share. Under this, however, our ageing populations are also facing challenges which will be really familiar to you all. But let me start, first of all, by looking at the UK end of things to put this in context. So through this UK lens, one of the key challenges that we have is improving healthy life expectancy. And our aim under the Healthy Ageing Challenge was to achieve 5 years of extra healthy life by 2035, quite a big challenge, particularly as we've seen a reduction in our life expectancy in the UK. Meanwhile, the number of years we can expect to spend in good health, of course, without a disabling illness, continues to decline. So that challenge is a real challenge. Secondly, reducing health inequalities, narrowing the gap in the experiences between the richest and the poorest. And UK data shows a financially secure and healthy later life is becoming increasingly unlikely for millions of people. Across the UK today, depending on where you live and how well off you are, there are differences of up to 10 years in how long we can expect to live, and more than 17 years in the time we get in good health before disabling illness. So again, another key challenge. The third challenge, and I know that you also own this challenge as well, is addressing the care crises. Issues around accessibility, eligibility, cost, provision, workforce retention and recruitment, quality of care issues, and related issues such as isolation and loneliness, which increases the incidence of accidents, use of public health, and early care home admission. And there's also a need in the UK to address that transition into care, particularly for those with cognitive impairments. Tackling employment issues for those over 50 is another key challenge. The UK state pension is one of the worst in Europe, providing just 58% of previous earnings from work on average, below the OECD average of 62%. Some people are having to work longer and in poorer health, while others have been leaving the workforce prematurely, particularly since the pandemic or over the pandemic. And recruitment and retention has become a real issue in many employments, not only because of the pandemic, but Brexit, of course. And I won't say much about Brexit, but that certainly has been a factor, and particularly people over 50 leaving work. Creating healthy and active age-friendly communities and housing is also a challenge. Almost 1 in 5 homes headed by somebody aged 60 and over is in a condition that endangers the health of people who live there. In fact, almost 9,000 people in England and Wales died in 2021 because their homes were too cold. And finally, there is an issue of how to re-engineer our towns and cities, coastal areas, and rural communities to become age-sensitive and dementia-friendly. Given the outdated infrastructure and closure of our retail and high streets in many of our communities, this is reaching quite crisis point in many communities. Now, I know Canada has similar challenges, which were discussed together with people from the UK in a colloquium in 2019. Some of you may have been at that colloquium. Supporting older adults to live well through integrated health and social care systems, embedding support in primary care and community-based services is a challenge. Understanding healthy ageing of First Nation elders, many of whom experience social isolation and substandard housing. And again, addressing the care crisis. The Canadian Social Survey by StatsCan earlier this year showed that only 2% of social care to older adults is provided by professionals and paid care workers. And this raises huge issues for carers juggling work and family life, just to mention one area. And the future of long-term care. with the pandemic exposing long-standing, widespread and pervasive difficulties and deficiencies in the long-term care sector. I think this highlights a moral imperative, not only for Canada, but the UK as well, to examine community support and housing options, including long-term care, and a particular challenge for remote and rural communities which may not have the capacity to support older residents. A Canadian roadmap for an ageing society by the Canadian Standards Agency also identified similar themes in the UK and Canada around work, such as the need to prolong participation in the workforce, provide support to those age-friendly workplaces, and assisting caregivers in the workforce. Now, given the similar challenges, what can we do together? What opportunities are there collectively for change, particularly in the context of post-pandemic world? The 2021 UN Decade of Healthy Aging outlines the need for a concerted, sustained, and inclusive action plan to ensure we live longer, healthier lives, leaving no one behind, and with older people at the centre. Now, such global agendas really require local actions, and in the UK, this has been manifest through the Healthy Ageing Challenge. So how has the UK risen to these challenges? Well, how better to hear from our director?
It's actually going to change how we live, work and relate to another. We may be living longer, but we're not necessarily living in good health for as long. We think this is a real opportunity, an opportunity to deliver the services and products that people want and need as they grow older, to enable them to remain active, productive, independent and socially connected across the generations for longer. And this isn't just a moral imperative, it makes economic sense too. And in the UK, to the tune of around £5 trillion for each extra healthy year that people are living. There's a real business opportunity there. The Healthy Ageing Challenge was set up to make the most of that opportunity. We've managed to actually be very diverse in terms of the income groups that our innovations are focused on. We're really looking at innovations that address people in lower income groups who actually have the most to gain by addressing issues of healthy aging. Our focus on moving to scale really means we're focused on impact as well, and to achieve the sort of impact we want at a population level, we have to actually reach out to the innovators right across the UK. The challenge was given £98 million to make a difference. Our ambition was to impact the lives of millions of people within a decade and really support the government's move for 5 extra years of healthy, independent life. In the short term, are we going to do that on our own? Absolutely not. But what I think we can do is catalyse innovators to actually generate the sort of things that will go on to achieve that long-term impact. Ageing populations are...
So the challenge, as George has said, aims to help people remain active, productive, independent and socially connected across generations for as long as possible. And it does this by enabling businesses, including social enterprise, to develop and deliver beneficial products, services and business models which can be scaled up to a global market. And so this is the way that healthy ageing in the UK is conceptualised. I think that's really important for us to recognise. But why invest in business and economic growth, as well as research and development in this area? The challenge was actually set up as part of something called the Industrial Strategy under the Theresa May government, with the intent of stimulating and developing an ageing market. So it was really driving that market. And it set out to create an ecosystem of researchers and investors to business and small ventures to catalyse and scale up healthy ageing products and to develop the sector, creating new opportunities for innovation by drawing in fresh funding from private investors and charities and embedding a user-led design approach. making sure older people were at the heart of this in designing quality products and aligning healthy aging solutions to their needs and aspirations, alongside a social, behavioural and design approach rather than a purely health approach, and a focus as well by the government that social science was really important in this ecosystem, was one of the attractions for me to take the post as research director. And if we look at the impact so far, as George has mentioned, it's a £98 million investment, 180 projects have been funded, 80% of projects are inclusive of lower income groups, 31 universities are engaged in our research, £46 million has been co-invested, and 7 investor partners have come forward. And this has been quite important because we've been able to reach all geographical areas of the UK. There are projects in every area of the UK, which has actually put into place part of what we call levelling up, which is a major policy initiative by UK government. Now, there's more on this slide than I can talk about, but this is basically what the challenge is about. There are several different schemes here, starting from Catalyst Awards, which are given to new and emerging businesses and researchers to spin out their ideas commercially, and we provide them with mentoring. There's investment to social enterprises, businesses focused on user-centered design, and our biggest investment is in what we call the trailblazers, which are businesses already in the market but want to scale up. And wrapping around all these investments is a community of practice, bringing all the initiatives together to share knowledge exchange events, and the research programme, which I lead. And the Social, Behavioural and Design Research Programme is a bespoke programme. It's quite discrete within this, but also we have research going on in all of the teams in all these initiatives. And the aim is really to support business to have impact. Now, there were 7 themes that we were picking up on, which map really onto the challenges that I was talking about earlier on in the presentation. And these provide a very holistic picture of what makes for a healthier later life. But rather than seeing these as challenges, we see them as opportunities for economic, social, and very importantly, social transformation. Opportunities for business to make a difference in the lives of older people. And so the research in the Social, Behavioural and Design programme had to draw on at least one of these themes. So I'm going to go on and talk a little bit about the research programme, and then I'll talk a little bit about how I see us working together with you in Canada on some of these themes. So there were 12 projects funded in the first round, which have a number of different commonalities. We have projects on age-friendly housing, on the outdoor environment, looking at the visitor economy, which means tourism basically, projects on the environmental determinants of health, projects on work, maintaining health at work and workforce retention, supporting social connections through digital inclusion, and supporting healthy aging and reducing inequalities through co-produced cultural activities. We did note, however, that there were several gaps in what we were funding, and so we had a further round of funding to really look at the hospitality and retail sectors, and specifically to look at the impact that we could develop through our research in those sectors. And also on climate change. We felt this was really imperative to really look at some of the global issues together. And so we're looking at climate change and age-friendly cities, where there are multiple sectors involved. Now, this next set of slides includes a number of projects. And what I've done here is describe the research on the left-hand side, and the other initiatives on the right-hand side. I'm not going to talk about other initiatives other than the research part from one, but just to give you an idea, now these slides are available at the end, of course, so you can look at these at your leisure. So what these slides are doing are looking at particular sectors that we're impacting, and the care sector is certainly one sector that we're focusing on. As we know, care workers face a perfect storm of low wages, insecure employment and burnout, and these problems worsen for carers over the age of 50. So one project, Healthier Working Lives, on the bottom there, brings together digital, creative, academic and commercial partners, along with care workers themselves, to transform aspects of the care sector through collaboration. So care workers are stimulating entrepreneurship. They're developing entrepreneurship themselves and generating innovative products themselves that will improve recruitment and retention, as well as enhancing their own health and well-being. And they've produced the Ripple co-design toolkit, which can be used in all kinds of change projects. And the ambition is that this will lead other care professionals to co-design initiatives. The tool they've got is builds all the relevant and usable tools in one place, so people aren't having to think about different avenues to get information. It inspires confidence for care workers to take control of their own environments and to drive change and improvement, and is accessible, building capacity and capability and equipping care professionals with skills to make change happen. And the second project under the care banner is that of GOLD. And GOLD is a piece of research that shows how effective digital tools can be to counter loneliness, and particularly in the care sector. We know that loneliness increases incidence of accidents, poor health, and care home admission. And the project actually explores all of these and tackles this through digital connectivity. One of the products that has come out of this is a virtual reality headset and treadmill, which is used to explore places of cultural significance in Cornwall, recreated in stunning VR. And these are being used in care homes to help people increase their physical mobility. Now, you'll hear about GOLD in a moment through a video, but I just want to highlight another project that is here, which is one of the Trailblazer projects. So this is one that's already in the market and is to be scaled up, and that's the Tribe project. And that's looking at social care and aims to eliminate inequality in the regional distribution of social care with artificial intelligence, building a picture of the regional care landscape. And local councils can map their provision against, and can map need against available services through this, identifying gaps. And then the Tribe team are also coming in and training extra carers in those gaps. But back to the GOLD project.
GOLD is short for Generating Older Active Lives Digitally, and it's a 3-year collaboration between the University of Stirling and the University of Plymouth's Health Technology Centre. GOLD is part of a larger UK government initiative called the Healthy Aging Challenge, the aim of which is to increase the number of healthy years that we live in older age. The importance of the GOLD project is that we're using the input and views of older people themselves to help us in the design and refinement of digital tools to promote health and well-being in older age.
Over the last 8 months, we've recruited around 80 participants, and we've worked with a range of older and younger adults from care homes and different community groups. And we've taken a series of technologies for them to try out, everything from virtual reality headsets all the way through to different kind of physical activity platforms. And we've also run some co-production sessions with them. So we've been doing kind of creative workshops with them where they tell us exactly what they like, what they don't like, and what their priorities would be in these areas of technology. And it's been so great to see how enthusiastic they've been to try these different technologies and give us back that feedback so that we can support in developing new technologies for them.
The thing I enjoyed most in the Gold project, one was the socialisation of mixing with a group and participating in the different exercises. It opened up new horizons for me, and also the opportunity to be active while sitting down.
It was something different, something I hadn't had experience of before. I think being able to try things you wouldn't normally have access to. Well, I learned that I could maybe have climbed a mountain if I'd tried to do it sooner in my life.
What we really want this project to do is have impact. So we're working with the academics, working with companies, and with the end users, user groups. So it's a collaboration between those three. And it's really important to get the co-design aspects from the workshops feeding back into the companies, because often their products are designed by younger people who don't understand maybe the needs of older people. It's not just about academic papers. You want our companies being able to benefit from the findings of the co-design groups. And then in the long term, that will mean we will have better engagement from people using the digital products, and that, as we wanted in the title, will generate older active lives digitally.
So the second sector that we are targeting is that of the work and the work environment. And another project is supporting healthy aging at work. And this is looking at menopause, juggling work and family life, financial well-being, and early onset dementia in the workplace. And it's gathering data from wearables. And this project is concentrating on the financial, hospitality, aerospace, defence, and housing sectors. And then the other area we're looking at is housing, the housing sector. And one project under the housing sector is designing homes for healthy cognitive aging. And again, using VR and a bespoke serious game that builds a shared understanding between professionals and older people and businesses to design homes and housing that promotes good cognitive health. Now, this video that I'm going to show looks at this and demonstrates the potential of VR in redesigning a prototype kitchen with older people living with dementia. So people living with dementia have been using this technology. And this is actually going to be taken forward by mainstream builders in the UK. And this particular project is working with a major global retailer in kitchen design and kitchen products. So we're very excited about this. There's no sound to this one. But this just shows some of the things that we've been doing with people living with dementia. And we can change where things are in the kitchen and run the VR again. And we've had a lot of feedback, and we're designing a particular home on the basis of this, which will be suitable for people to live healthily with cognitive impairment. Okay, so the next set of slides is going to look at how the Healthy Aging Challenge actually achieves its impact. And one of the key things that we've been looking at is co-production. You've heard it been mentioned in the videos, and this is one of the key things that runs through all the projects. And we're going to hear a little bit about co-production here from one of the projects. This is a slightly longer video, but I think illustrates really well the different processes that this particular project has gone through.
I'm a co-researcher. I've been co-researching for over 2 years now.
The project is called Connecting Through Culture as We Age, and it's a project that is looking at digital cultural innovation for and with older adults. So we're working with a group of 18 older adults who are co-researchers, who are either disabled, socioeconomically or racially minoritized.
Oh, I have enjoyed being a co-researcher so much. It sparked my creativity as well as introducing me to so many interesting things that are going on, so many interesting people. I've reconnected with looking at things that are in the future in a way.
So the co-researchers have been working with us from the beginning of the project. It started with us finding out more about them and their lives and what was important to them in relation to both social connection and also digital arts and cultural participation.
The best thing about being a co-researcher in the early stages was being in a group where my lived life experience was really valued. I enjoyed, for example, I enjoyed participating in the groups. You know, there was enough space to feel seen and heard. It's very easy when you're older to become invisible.
As a co-researcher, well, there's been so much. We've had outings for immersive experiences within art, so numerous workshops. I ran one myself, doing sort of fabric collage, and I've also gone to a lot of talks on robotics, AI, virtual reality worlds.
We've been really keen throughout the project to work really closely with the co-researchers and respond to their interests and the things that they want to do.
I love the way you get the sky dappling through the tree leaves.
So from the beginning, really, we've been asking co-researchers if they wanted to lead workshops, or we've had poetry groups set up. We've had co-researchers who have wanted to make films, and we've been able to respond to that as well. So we've been really keen to develop from the interests of the co-researchers and to make sure that that is embedded into the project as well, to allow them and to encourage them to feel that they have the agency to actually be creative and to make stuff. Yeah. So we spent a long time working with them to really understand their lives and what was important to them. We have then run some workshops to enable them to get to know what co-designing is like and how they might get involved in that. For example, introducing design processes to them, introducing design vocabulary to them that many weren't familiar with at that point in the project.
What we've done in the workshop by designing things and making things, you have to really put on your thinking cap and put it into gear, and it's surprising what you can do.
It's been a very interesting a different way of thinking about how to construct projects, how to put projects together, how to create things in the real world, and I've really enjoyed listening to all the other people and their incredible ideas.
And then we brought them together with artists and creative technologists to come up with ideas for how they might work together.
Hello, my name is Ruth Myers.
Bantag. Liz Clark. So my name is Becca Rose and I am fun, creative and curious.
So right now we have 6 teams who are our prototype teams or our demonstrator projects, who are mixed groups, mixed across ages, mixed across professional backgrounds and practice, and include our co-researchers. So we have co-researchers who are acting as lead artists in these groups in some teams. We have co-researchers who are contributing stories of their lives to some of these groups. We have co-researchers who are project managing and co-leading some of these teams. And what the teams are doing is working on ideas that came out of our workshops to prototype digital cultural innovations for older adults. I I think what we imagine will happen through this is that the products and services that are developed might feel different, might be more useful for the older adults who might want to experience them because people like them potentially have been involved in that design process.
The project is collecting older women's stories, which will then be transformed, put into an interactive book, which will be a physical thing, a physical object, which will be able to be taken round to places like libraries.
One of the projects that we're supporting is called Retirement Reloaded, and that is about challenging stereotypes of older women that we often see in media, in our daily lives, and thinking about ageism. And that project is very process orientated. It's looking at bringing a group of older women together from different cultural backgrounds to have conversations and tell stories about their lives, about the struggles that they've had, the challenges they've faced, and also their determination to not fit into those stereotypes necessarily. We have 6 teams working together now. So we are working with a business advisor. The teams all have access to that person. We're really thinking about business in a very wide sense. So we're interested in community interest companies, we're interested in social enterprises, and we're thinking about the many different forms of business that our digital cultural products and services might evolve into. We don't expect all 6 of those projects will be successful because there's an element of being a failure being written into these kind of risky prototype type projects. We imagine that some of these projects will perhaps suggest processes that other communities and other places could also take on. So it may be that there are legacies related to the process of how these teams have worked together that could scale into different communities and to different places. How do you actually run design processes with and for older adults?
It's an amazing project, that one. So the second theme is that of interdisciplinarity. And we have 3 projects on climate change which actually really illustrate the interdisciplinary nature of our projects. One project looks at the factors that contribute to the resilience of older people to climate change in the UK, exploring how we build on existing dimensions of age-friendly cities and communities to deliver resilient places. And this project is collaborating with key climate change activators, and the research explores how to mitigate against climate-related extreme weather events through co-designing, co-producing solutions at the local, community and city level. And that particular project has physicists, geriatricians, social workers, a whole group of people working together on that. The second climate change project is looking at very creative methods, so comic creation, mobile interviews and video with people in 5 very diverse communities: a coastal care home, a community garden, an upland farming community, post-industrial town, and a floodplain where there's a traveller community. So they're all contributing their stories and looking at how to change behaviours around climate change and their vision for the future, which will be retold collectively in a bilingual, accessible visual comic, which will be displayed on various high streets across the UK, so quite innovative. And a further example of interdisciplinarity and intersectoral work that is reflected throughout the research programme is demonstrated by the SPACE programme, which uses a causal loop diagram to identify all the different components and disciplinary areas involved in the urban environment. And so I'm going to just show the last video illustrating some of this.
The SPACE project is a collaborative action to investigate the impacts of urban environments on healthy ageing and the cognitive health of diverse individuals and their communities. In this film, we'll be looking at the concept of planetary health and related topics like climate change and how these factors impact our health as we age and what we can do to combat some of their impacts.
The idea of planetary health is that we need to understand that human health depends on natural systems. And if we damage natural systems, we are damaging ourselves. Climate change is a context that creates unprecedented situations. Having this climate instability can impact vulnerable populations like older people, and for example, things like heat waves can have a big impact in their respiratory or cardiovascular system, and also some extreme weather events like floods can create a shock, and it can be difficult for them to recover.
We pay a lot more attention to weather forecasts and things like that. So we notice when a storm comes in or it rains, it is wetter. There's no doubt about that.
I did notice this year that it has been a lot warmer, and it can be a bit uncomfortable at times.
You know, certainly it's become windier, more humid, and certainly warmer. Like we're in the end of October now and it's 16 degrees. Like that would never been the case. And I do think it definitely impacts on your health.
We are developing the conceptual framework of the project, and to do that we did a workshop with all the experts and developed what it's called a causal loop diagram. What we are defining with our causal loop diagram is that anything related to cognitive decline in older people is complex, and all the different determinants and factor risks are part of a very complex system. This also relates with the idea of planetary health. It's this idea that everything is connected.
Climate Northern Ireland brings together a range of bodies in partnership from across the public and private sector and academia to understand how we can best raise awareness, how we can guide good policy making and informed evidence-based policy making, and also to ultimately create actions which inform that decision making. This can, for example, look like developing plans for how organisations and structures would actually adapt, what they need to consider in their emergency planning or their spatial planning, and how they create the places where we live.
One of the benefits of these particular types of green and blue spaces, such as the Connswater Community Greenway, is really to support climate adaptation and mitigation in the future. So things like they can support sustainable modes of travel, sustainable energy sources, sustainable housing and sustainable food sources, as well as helping to reduce risk of flooding and reduce the city temperatures as well.
We hope that by sharing the findings of the research we can inform policy and create a city for future generations to live well and have healthy and prosperous lives. And I think the health of people and the health of the planet is central to city policies to create those conditions.
Okay. And the third area where we feel we're having impact is through capacity building in ageing research. And many of you will know we held a pre-conference workshop on international collaboration at the last CAG conference in Regina. And as you can see from the photograph, Nora Keating from Canada was very much part of that workshop. The British Society of Gerontology has also formed a special interest group in ageing and business, and it's bringing ageing research and business communities much closer together. It's actually run by business people. And of course, we've got our community of practice, which brings all the researchers and all the projects together on a regular basis to share knowledge and skills. So these are some of the things that we've been doing in the programme. Just some very personal reflections from me then before I talk about go back to Canada. As we know, there are very many different paradigms and expectations and timescales for actions between business and academics. Working with different sectors can be a challenge both ways for researchers. Different languages, different value systems. And this has been a particular challenge and issue in the work that we've been doing. The tripartite relationship also, in co-production between older people, businesses and researchers, is also a new dimension. And developing tools such as the serious game that I was mentioning earlier has been one way in which it's been helpful in reaching a shared agenda for many of these issues. My third reflection here is, what's the added value of actually having a programme? We could have just had a number of projects. But the programme has enabled a join-up between initiatives. So the trailblazers, the businesses in the market, the catalysts and research are all collectively together looking at how we can create solutions to some of these challenges together. And projects have shared solutions with each other in a very supportive environment. And this has been particularly crucial during the pandemic when everything went online. Of course, that was an unexpected interruption where the programme had to be completely flexible and very supportive. There were problems around access to care homes, of course, but also the opportunity for more digital products and methods to be used and to be developed by teams. And we noticed there was a heightened awareness of ageing issues amongst businesses, and they became much more sensitive to social science issues, which were constantly in the news at the time. There were also difficulties, of course, as I said earlier on, with Brexit around recruiting staff, and several of our projects have had to restructure their proposal because of staffing difficulties. And my final reflection is on impact and legacy. We will be developing a roadmap for ageing research and taking forward initiatives with other organisations, the International Longevity Centre UK, the British Society of Gerontology. It'll be critical for them to build on what we've started, because the big challenge is that we have cliff edge funding in March. After that, we risk losing all the staff that have been on all the projects. And as we know, there's an issue about impact never being immediate, and there's no follow-on funding. So there's some real issues here, and we need to make sure we have a legacy for the challenge. So finally then, what are the opportunities for Canada and the UK to be working together in these issues? I think there are strategic opportunities, and I think there are opportunities in building capacity. So for researchers and funders, I think there's a shared research agenda and roadmap that could be developed together. Reflecting on the 2019 UK-Canadian colloquium, the policy implications of increasing longevity could continue to be discussed to provide a much longer-term monitoring function. The strategic plans around research funding could be shared between CIHR, SSHRC and the UKRI, our research funding body. And close comparative work on our longitudinal data sets could be a very good, provide an evidence base in taking forward shared agendas. I know some of this is happening, of course, through the CLSA and ELSA, NICOLA and Haggis, which are the longitudinal studies in the different countries of the UK. And secondly, there are business opportunities and research collaborations, leveraging the strengths of Age Well and the Canadian Frailty Network, which is looking at catalysts and developing that through the Strategic Science Fund. I think we can learn from each other from these similar initiatives. And there are innovation exchanges going on. This summer, we have researchers from the UK and Canada doing exchanges, looking at innovation and the outcomes from research. I think we both need to think further around what opportunities are there for business to be engaged through strategic means. Is there an appetite for business to lead in these areas? Are we seeing breakthroughs with business? And what are the next steps to build on what we have achieved? I think also there are opportunities in terms of capacity building. The CIHR Summer School can be a vehicle for collaboration. British Society of Gerontology and the Canadian Association of Gerontology both have early career research groups. The BSG Special Interest Group on Ageing and Business has an international remit. And Canada is building capacity through developing training programs in population research with skills to support evidence-informed decision-making. And we should be doing something similar in the UK. CIHR directors of the Canadian Research Centres on Ageing could link with our newly formed AgeNet UK, which is a new network of research centres on ageing in the UK. And I think there are questions we need to think about. How do we ensure that we're building for this future in this area of work and retaining programmes of ageing research? So in conclusion then, I think there are new opportunities in ageing research and new frontiers to explore, some stimulated by the pandemic. But we need to seize this moment. We need more interdisciplinarity, more mission-orientated or challenge-led research, co-produced research with older people at the heart, with business and industry. More outlets for knowledge exchange and translation and implementation, and greater capacity building and skills for the future. I think it's imperative to listen and engage older people from the start and directly link older people with business. That's one thing we've really learned. But offering them training and incentives to develop skills and knowledge in co-production. So bringing in the private, commercial and business sectors alongside public agencies to build this ageing ecosystem, I think is one of the future directions of research, particularly to stimulate the social, economic and technological innovation in ageing, to improve the lives of our citizens in our respective countries. So thank you very much, and if you want more information, you can get it from our QR code. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello. Thank you very much, Judith, for that intriguing and inspirational talk. You've really encapsulated many of the challenges, not only in the UK, but in Canada as well. We're going to be using these mics for questions, so we have a little time for Q&As. So perhaps as a few people are articulating their questions in their heads, I'll ask a first one. And that is, the connecting points between the researchers and the public, and in particular the private sector, seems to be an area that we've been challenged with for many years. Do you have any suggestions how to foster those kinds of relationships and moving forward to get the private sector to really get behind, the tremendous research findings and co-produced knowledge and innovations that you've created?
Yes, thank you for that question, Andrew. I think one of the key things is funding. And what we've noticed, of course, we had a lot of funding. £98 million is quite a lot to engage businesses. There were incentives for them to get involved right from the start. So we had shared agendas. Researchers had to engage with business to get the money, and businesses were given money directly to engage with researchers. I think that was a big part. And this, of course, is part of a bigger initiative in the UK, where we have what we call city-region deals now. Huge amounts of money, multi-million pounds, go into regions to build these links between research, universities, and business partners. So I think funding is absolutely fundamental to this, for sure, yeah.
Okay, I'm Shiraz. I'm curator of Grandparents Film Festival. So my question is about grandparents. What role does grandparenting play in healthy longevity? Because there seems to be very little research on grandparenting, and in Canada there are 8 million grandparents. 1 in 5 of the population is, I guess, similar in UK. And is there any research done also in terms of different nationalities? Thank you.
Thank you. Very good question. Grandparents play an absolutely vital role, of course, and I think directly in longevity, genetics and genes, of course, and but also in terms of the role they play within families to engage in healthy aging across the family and across the life course. So there's quite a considerable amount of research on grandparenting. I'm not so sure in terms of its connections around longevity, but that's a really good research question, I think, to explore. And it's one where I think we haven't really addressed it in the Healthy Aging Challenge, but I can certainly take that back because you know, a lot of people that have engaged in the challenge have been grandparents, and particularly in terms of our project on maintaining health at work, grandparenting has come up in that in relation to people juggling work and family life. So, yeah, good question. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Eda. I'm the Health Link Manager of the Social Prescribing Program, which was also very popular in the UK for about 10 years. We are supporting marginalized folks that are coming to us from clinical referrals, and we are connecting them to social services. And what we are seeing is, you know, a lot of folks, older adults, who are in poverty. And how are we including homeless seniors and seniors in poverty in such research? Thank you.
Yeah, another good question, of course. And I think it's one which comes up all the time. How do we include homeless people in particular? We have programs of research looking at homelessness, but of course, how do we actually engage them in our everyday research on these particular topics? And again, we've not done that. What I can say about the inequality and poverty aspect is that one of the conditions of funding was that all the research teams had to be working in areas where and with marginalised people in areas of poverty, and our businesses similarly, it had to work across different, not just different age groups, but also income levels as well. And that is something that the social gradient that we are actually looking at quite carefully in the challenge, because it's one of the things that's been evaluated currently actually about the challenge. So I can come back to you on that in probably about 6 months when we have the evaluation. It looks at the moment quite a good distribution, but we'll see. And I think many of the groups, as you saw from the Connecting Through Culture, have, as co-researchers, people who have been really marginalised. Obviously, that doesn't come across necessarily in the video, but we know that they were from groups that had been marginalised in many different ways. So I think there'll be case studies coming out around some of this. Thank you.